Christ is born.
As I mentioned in our first video, each week during Advent, we'll look at a different element of the nativity scene as interpreted by Pope Francis. He begins with the background, which he describes as a starry sky wrapped in the darkness and silence of night. So that's where we'll begin. Our Holy Father suggests that we allow this starry night to remind us of the times when we have experienced such darkness. God is there, he says, to answer our questions about the meaning of life. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why was I born at this time in history? Why do I love? Why do I suffer? It was to answer these questions that God became man. His closeness brings light where there is darkness and shows the way to those dwelling in the shadow of suffering, the Pope wrote. If you can, stand outside in silence some night this week and look up at the stars. Ask God whatever questions are on your mind or in your heart. Meditate on Psalm 139. O God, you search me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. Where shall I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? Pope Francis also talks about the landscape of the nativity scene, mentioning that it frequently includes the ruins of pagan temples or other buildings, which serve, he says, as a visible sign of fallen humanity. Even the stable usually looks primitive or run down. This traditional setting tells us that Jesus is newness in the midst of an aging world. He has come to heal and rebuild, to restore the world and our lives to their original splendor. I often wonder about the climate in Bethlehem that first Christmas. Was it warm or cold the night Jesus was born? Raining or snowing? I've never been to the Holy Land, but I did a little research and found that December in the region around Jerusalem and Bethlehem is the rainy season, with mild temperatures comparable to December in northern Florida. December would have been a verdant time, with fruit trees in bloom, as well as hyacinth, crocus, cyclamen, and narcissus blooming. After the more arid summer months, winter in Bethlehem is naturally a colorful season of rebirth. Isn't that appropriate in light of our celebration of Christ's birth in December? In his letter, Pope Francis wrote, "With what emotion we should arrange the mountains, streams, sheep, and shepherds in the nativity scene. As we do, we are reminded that as prophets foretold, all creation rejoices in the coming of the Messiah." The Pope might have been referring to the 35th chapter of the prophet Isaiah, where we read, "The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and bloom like the crocus. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God." Or he might have been referring to Psalm 96, where we read, "Let the heavens be glad and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and everything in it. Then the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth." This week, in addition to contemplating a starry night sky, consider picking up a small cyclamen or other flowering plant at the market, or some narcissus bulbs to grow indoors this December. They'll brighten up your house and remind you that even in the midst of a pandemic, all creation is touched by the coming of the Messiah.
Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.